My name is Paddy Meskin, although I'm never called Paddy because nobody can spell it. I'm normally called Paddy. I was born in London. I live in South Africa. And what else did you want to know?
How are you connected to Religions for Peace?
How am I connected to Religions for Peace? I have been involved with Religions for Peace in South Africa virtually since it was created in 1984. It was created by Bishop Tutu after he was given the Nobel Peace Prize, and it was during one of the darkest periods of apartheid. And one of the things that we needed was in fact a way to protest peacefully against apartheid, because many of us were unhappy with the way that the ANC had started taking up arms and using bombs and things like that. So we wanted a non-violent way. And the use of in those days it wasn't Religions for Peace, it was World Conference on Religions for Peace. But it was really an excellent way. And not only was it a way for us to look at fighting against apartheid, but also bringing all the people of faith together to work towards finding a solution. And when in fact we became a democracy in 1994, one of the amazing things that came out of that whole process during apartheid years was that we had this wonderful group of religious leaders who were working together. We had marched Muslims and Jews and Christians and Hindus and Buddhists and traditionalists. We'd all marched together against apartheid. And now, as we realized that whilst apartheid was gone, there were still lots of issues to create a democracy and to make a better world for our communities. And I think that that's something that was very important, that we learned during that whole process of apartheid, how important it was for the faith-based organizations to come together. And that was where Religions for Peace was a phenomenal process. And I was involved with them also virtually from the beginning. And I have been either a chair of Durban or now the president for South Africa as well for about 15, 16 years now, for my sins. Anyway, the thing is that Africa particularly, and South Africa specifically, is a continent where religion is very important. In some countries like Nigeria, Egypt, you have a 99% affiliation to religions. Obviously in Egypt and Nigeria, well, Egypt definitely, Islam is the major group, but they have quite a biggish group who belong to the patriarchal religions and Catholic. And in Nigeria, there's a very big Catholic group. But in South Africa, we have a very diverse group. We have a lot of Muslims. We have even more Hindus. We have well over 1 million, probably closer to 2 million Hindus. We have Jews, we have Buddhists, we have Baha'is, we have Sikhs. It's a plethora of religious communities. And it was very easy for us to come together and work together. And that's something which I value greatly. because my first area of work was within my synagogue. When I just got married, I became involved in the synagogue, and this is in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. It was through my synagogue that I actually became involved in work in the communities, especially rural and township communities. And it was not easy to do so because the security police would track you and keep an eye on you and let you know that they were watching you. Your phone would be tapped. It wasn't easy to work in those communities. And there were a lot of problems even with the communities, because those who felt that we were working for the other group and not for their group got very angry. I remember one time we actually had all our tires slashed and they wanted to necklace us. Necklacing was a horrendous way of killing people. They put a tire on, filled it with petrol, etc. And in fact I lost some of my students to necklacing. But why we actually started special programs was because we were concerned that the schools in the townships particularly, and in some of the rural communities, had been burnt down. Teachers were scared to go in. So we started a community program in the city for matriculants, specifically because we wanted matriculants to be able to go up, because otherwise we would have problems with kids getting into the school the following year, etc. So the younger kids were very upset about this. Their attitude was education for all or education for none. But we did this program, and more than 4,500 kids came through our doors. And today, many of those young men and women are not so young, and they are ministers in religion, they are managers, they work in banks, they're teachers, they're lecturers, they work in the tax office, not so good, but they have really managed to build wonderful lives for themselves. But the great thing is that they remember what was given to them. And we've had a number of them who've come to us and said, we want to work with you. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. And some of the work that we've been doing in Diaconia and Religions for Peace and that, some of these young people came back to work with us. And some of my kids from the Youth Peace Forum are now training and working with us in children's rights, working with us in the Youth Peace Forum as a way of giving back. And we realize that today there is such a need for these programs, because although we are theoretically a democracy, we are a democracy in that we have voting and that, but there's lots of things wrong. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of people who don't have rights. I would say 50% of the people are not getting the basic human rights that they should be. So we're having to do even more work, and we need to make people aware about those rights, both as women's rights, men's rights, and children's rights, because there are such a lot of things that are wrong. If we look at the whole issue of violence in the country, our youth, our young kids between especially 12 to 25, many of them have left school without finishing school, with no education. And all that they've got to do is end up with violence. So it's very important that we find ways to do this work. Religions for Peace, this is one of their major areas. We're also working with the Global Religions Network for Children, teaching about non-violence, teaching about education, trying to give them the tools that they need. And one of the biggest tools of all is teaching them how to make choices. So that's part of the work that we are doing, a huge amount of the work that we are doing. And then, of course, there's all the orphans. We have over 1 million orphans as a result of HIV, TB, etc. We are finding today that the need for healthcare, and not just HIV healthcare, but primary healthcare, resources and knowing and understanding about well-being. So we are working with kids. We bring them in and we use them as ambassadors to go back to their schools. And they are doing some absolutely amazing work. We're busy doing a whole lot of posters now, which will be put onto the websites and Facebook pages, so that they can encourage other young people. And the schools are actually starting peace centres at their schools. A whole lot of them have got these centres. They collect for babies, they collect for children. We're making birthing kits, we're making all sorts of things, working with these children's quilts to help give to the gogos and things like that. We've set up a hospice. So there are so many programs going on, exhibitions. We've actually been asked by the city, as a result of my being awarded a Living Legend Award, they've asked me to help them set up a program that I set up in 1994 called Celebration of the Right to Be. And that was as a result of my working in the TRC. And I worked with a little boy who was 9 years old at the time when he gave his deposition to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He had seen his mother and father and brother slaughtered in front of him by a group of soldiers. He lived in an area called Kwamakuta. He was 5 years old and obviously devastated, very traumatized, and had never ever been given any kind of help, to psychological help. So one of the things we were doing was trying to help these kids who were giving their depositions. But he drew this picture, and it was of a house burning. There was a mother and a father and a child lying on the ground, and in the background were 3 men with no faces. And I said to him, "Michael, tell me about this picture." He said, "That's my story. I'm in the tree there, you can see that little figure, that's me. My mom told me to run and hide. It was the only place to hide. But unfortunately I saw them killing my mom and dad and my brother. And I sat there waiting because I was frightened. And eventually one of the neighbors came and took me down and took me to their house. And I said to him, "Why do you think this happened?" He said, "They did it because we were different. If you were different, you got killed." And that story made me create the Celebration of the Right to Be. That exhibition started off with, what is religion? Why do we have it? What are the things that are common to us? What are the things that are different? And then we looked at all the religions, and we worked with all the communities, Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, etc. And we created posters. I asked each community to set up a little set. So for instance, the Buddhists set up a beautiful shrine. The Muslims set up their Quran. They showed Muslim dress. They showed some of the books that they use. The Hindus had shrines of their various gods and goddesses and things. And what we did was we actually brought people from all the faith communities together it was shown at the Jewish Club, but we had guides from all of the communities taking children round. That exhibition went all over the province. I took it up to the north, to the south, to the Midlands, and more than 30,000 children saw that exhibition. And so they've asked us to put a new one together. It's falling to pieces now. So we're going to put this together. And it actually, for me, it follows on from the conference we had last year, Welcoming the Other. Because this is about welcoming the other, welcoming one another, getting to know one another and understanding. And although our schools today are open to all groups, there's still lots of antagonism. So we need to open it up, bring communities together. And so that's what we're doing. And that's in fact the work that I do all the time. I work with schools, I work with communities, I teach religious groups on health, on education, on the Millennium Development Goals, on issues that we could work together, particularly those that are commonalities, and to emphasize what is common to us and to celebrate the differences. And in fact, that's why I was awarded the Living Legend Award for the work that I have done for human rights, for peace education, for bringing people of faith together. And I just want to make a mention to link up my Religions for Peace and my religious background. I'm Jewish. And as I say, I started in my synagogue and temple. And in 76, I came to an international conference for the temple. I was the president of all the Jewish women, the Reformed Jewish women in South Africa. And we had this big conference in San Francisco. And one of the big things that was portrayed at this conference was the importance of different faith groups coming together. And of course, for a South African, where white Afrikaners didn't talk to white English speaking, and Indians didn't talk to Africans, and Africans didn't talk to coloureds, this was amazing. It was wow. And I decided to go take it back to South Africa. I took it back to South Africa and I said to my rabbi, I want to start this program. I want to call it Operation Understanding. And he said to me, you do realize that it's illegal? So I said, yes, but we can say we're praying. He said, okay. So we held the first one. We sent out invitations. I sent out about 50 invitations. I thought, 50 people come, it'll be a good start. 450 people pitched up from all faith communities, coloureds, blacks, Indians. It was the first time we'd all sat together in a hall. Many of them sort of looked and, what are all these people doing here? But it was unbelievable. I was so excited about it. And it was round about Passover. And the following year, I had a Seder where we asked each of the other faith communities to come to a mock Seder and for each of them to give their views on peace and freedom and democracy, because that was really what the Seder was about. And so we've been doing these programs in our Jewish community since 1976. And so it was a natural thing for me when I started working with Religions for Peace to work with the interfaith community. And for me, I can only stress how important it is, how much I've learned from one another. I'll give you just one little example. There are hundreds of things, but this particular one. If you look at the Abrahamic faiths, the Jewish, the Muslim, the Christian, the Baha'i. They are all centered around basically Judaism, but Judaism developed. That's where it starts. They all have the Ten Commandments and the various people in the Jewish history are all part of them. They focus on the people. They don't focus on the world. They don't focus on the creation. They focus on the creation of people, but not on life in general. The Eastern communities, on the other hand, the Buddhists, the Zen, the Sikhs, the Hindus, their value is on all life. And by coming together, we have learned so much from them, particularly in terms of the environment. And since we've been working in the Millennium Development Goals since 2000, that has been an amazing teaching process and learning process for us. So there's much to learn from all of us. And I bless the day that I started working with Religions for Peace, with my synagogue, and that I continue to work with all these absolutely amazing human beings.